So those folks at Retro Games Ltd are finally releasing an emulated rubber keyed Spectrum that will plug into your big telly and comes with 48 games included with the ability to load your own. In my previous video about it, in the description and possibly on your screen somewhere now, I listed 10 games I will be adding across a whole bunch of genres using 3 primary rules. Number 1, it had to be joystick playable, so you could, sit on your sofa and you weren't 3 inches away from your TV screen. But apparently that didn't matter to you lot. I just jumped in because number 2 rule is it's got to be jump in and playable. You see what I did there? Brilliant, wasn't it? Which also you didn't like because you pulled me up on the fact that I chose 2 games, Firefly and Laser Squad, that weren't really jump in and playable. So yeah, that one's possibly out as well. And rule number 3 was it had to be downloadable, which I'm gonna really try and stick to. But there are a couple of games that all of you seem to choose which are not downloadable, but we'll come to them in a bit. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, we're not calling it the Retro Spectro anymore because I did promise I wouldn't call it anymore. So thanks to Richard in the comments who kindly come up with our new name, we're now calling it the Rectrum Spectrum, or just the Rectrum for short. So why am I repeating this all again? Well, at the end of the last video, I asked you lovely lot to give me your 10 games using the same genres and primary rules that you would like to put on your Rectrum. Now just look at your responses. You lovely lot duly obliged. So a big thank you to everyone who got back to me and made this video possible.
I love you, I love you, I love you!
Now, you did however manage to moan that you like using the keyboard, don't care much for it being pick up and playable, and who cares if Tony, Pete and Dave can't download them. I even had Jason give me a top 10 homebrew game list, which I thought was interesting, so I asked him to name just one of them that I can include in the video, and he said his of course. A bunch of you also mentioned a lot of games that already come pre-installed on your Rectrum, so before you kick off that Target Renegade or Head Over Heels is not in this video, here's a quick list of games that come pre-installed. In all fairness to you, I should have probably added this to the last video, so I'll let that one slide. So we have extra genres. We have games that take some learning, we have games that are keyboard only, games that are bloody difficult to get hold of, and even games that you have written. I don't know about you lot, but I'm pretty excited. So let's start with one of those extra genres, with Best Maze Game. So it turns out you lot just love running about in mazes, and a lot of you suggested a lot of games. So a quick shout out to a few that didn't quite get enough people mention them. Sabre Wolf, we all remember that one. I struggled actually with this. I hadn't played it in a long time and it was all right, but yeah, not as good as I remember. Equinox, which is pretty bloody fantastic. Captain Fizz, which I'd never played before and is quite tricky to get hold of. And Non-Terraqueous. Had a quick go of it. Sorry Denny, I will play this some more, I promise. And these two, Splat and Maziacs. Splat is actually pretty good fun and a stupidly annoying early 1983 title by Incentive Software, who later went on to try and conquer 3D with Driller, Total Eclipse and so on. A case of avoiding the moving walls and the maze that surrounds to make it to the exit before you go splat. Incredibly addictive and seemingly impossible to reach the end on level 7 apparently. Even the instructions tell you you have no chance. Bastards. But that's not our best game. This is. And just look at that artwork. Just look at it. Look. This is Don Priestley's, yes him of the Mahusive Sprite Games, 1983 remake of his 1982 ZX81 game, Mazogs, Maziacs. Now despite having to create a new category for this one, it actually ticks all the boxes. Joystick is available, it's very pick up and playable, and it's downloadable too, so yep, you win that one. One of the earliest redefined key games that I've played with nice on-screen instructions too. The plot, although simple, is obviously a little bit bonkers. You simply work your way through the maze to pick up gold and escape with it. Protecting the gold are the Maziacs. If you have a sword, you'll duff them up every time. If you don't, good luck my friend. Swords only work once, so you'll have to find another quickly after a fight. You need to eat the food or whatever it is to stop you dying from a lack of energy, and speak to prisoners along the way who all know which way the gold is apparently, which is kinda handy. You do have the ability to see the big map, but can't move whilst looking at it, although the Maziacs can. So you got all that? Good. Now, slightly laggy controls and slowdowns when shit gets real aside, I have fond memories of this one. The animations of the Maziacs, the hero and all the fighting that ensues is very well done, and frightens the bejesus out of me when one comes out of nowhere in an otherwise of its time looking game. Crash reviewed it in issue 1, giving it a commendable 82% and really praising the game possibly more than the score reflects in all honesty. Your best sport game next, with a lot of you agreeing with Hypersports. Thank you. Quite a few sporting titles mentioned, from the ambitious Californian games to the rather basic Football Manager. But a clear winner scrapes in because darts, yes darts, is a competitive sport. And yes, there is no other better darts game anywhere, and I mean anywhere, than Mastertronic's 1986 budget offering 180. Set in the sporting arena of your local, with the barmaid pulling pints and dogs pissing up the bar, you play against 8 of the best pub dart players to exist, from Beer Belly Bill to Limp Wrist Larry, seen here, as you work your way up to playing World Pub Champion Jammy Jim. A useful finishing combination sheet included in the inlay. Honestly, it's all here. What actually sets this apart is the brilliant control system that actually feels quite nice to use, which instantly makes this heaps better than most dart games. Graphics are not going to win any prizes, but for $2.99 I'm not sure you could have found a better way of spending £3. Sinclair users Graham Taylor gave the game 5 out of 5, saying darts should be boring, but it's certainly not here, a closet hit. This one also passes all 3 of my prerequisites too. You lot are getting good at this. Best arcade game up next, with Renegade and Green Beret getting quite a few mentions, which are both solid choices, but the one game that actually got more mentions than any other game in this entire video was Elite's 1986 classic port of Bomb Jack. Some 2 years after the successful Tekken arcade game, it might have been a case of everyone moving on from this by the time Elite snapped up the rights. So it was important that Elite got this right, and boy did they. Everything that makes the arcade game heaps of fun is here. The jump mechanic, the speed in which you need to whiz around the screen, the bonus options in collecting specific bombs, it really has everything you could have wished for here on the Spectrum. Yes, it misses the vibrant colours of the arcade, but the colour choices just about work with the amount of sprites whizzing around the screen against very cool backdrops. Now, I seem to remember everyone having this game when I was 12 or so, or should I say I remember everyone having a copy of this game at least. The magazines loved it all for the same reasons, commenting here in Your Sinclair how it's a perfect high score achiever that is extremely addictive. Although joystick and damn playable boxes are firmly ticked here, easily downloadable is not the case with Elite's entire back catalogue on sites like World of Spectrum and Spectrum Computing. But if you do manage to get a copy, then arcade fun is 100% guaranteed. Now, I flippantly said this in the last video. Now, I've not bothered with text adventures, as you do get The Hobbit already included, and quite frankly, what more would you want? But did that stop any of you mention 101 different ways to adventure on your Rectrum? No, of course it didn't. Graphical and text are bundled together here, so shout outs for some titles that you lot reckon are worthy of being included. We have the classic Wild Bunch, which I love to fail miserably playing poker in back as a wee nipper. Valkyrie 17, which I had no memory of, but piqued my interest when it asked if I had pirated the game. Of course I said yes, and it booted me back to the loading screen, so tricks on you, as it's 2024 and I'm using emulation, losers. Contact Sam Cruise, which is a bit more of an arcade adventure, but definitely deserves a mention somewhere in this video. Colossal Adventure, which is just a sort of text-based old school adventure. And another 200 odd titles you kindly reminded me of. The one that squeaked through though with more than one mention was the walk around and throw stuff at NPCs simulator, Valhalla. I mean, obviously there was actually something to do, collect some shit. Oh, actually, don't swear by the way, because Mary will come on and kick you in the nuts. A game that felt ahead of its time really. Yes, it's just a bunch of stickmen, but you had NPCs that went around doing their own shit. Oh, don't swear. You had a sense of freedom that rarely existed anywhere else at that time. It almost didn't matter if you had no clue what you were doing, just meandering around annoying the nearest god, goddess, dwarf, etc., seeing what you could and couldn't do. Not at any point did I think about what I should be collecting or doing. Crash Magazine enjoyed the animations but found it all just a bit walking around and seeing things and eating food, which in all fairness it is. But they also gave it 81.5%. Ever seen a half score before? As for the rules, well, obviously joysticks is out, and pick up and play is as well, as I reckon if you want to give this a go, the manual is a must read. But it is downloadable though, so happy days. Right, on to racing, driving, car, bike games, just so I could shoehorn Death Chase in. But not that many racing or driving games mentioned by you lot, which would indicate you were probably happy with Death Chase. But one that did come up quite a few times was obviously Ocean Software's Spectrum classic Chase HQ. From Bill Harbison's cracking loading screen to the neat little graphical touches like the little arm that puts the siren on top of the car, this game exemplified what this little 8-bit micro could do in the right hands. Even better on the 128K because of the superb speech and Jonathan Dunn's fantastic soundtrack, this was probably as close to the arcade game on any system back then, let alone just a specky. As with the arcade, I remember this being quite tough, but at least you do get some reward screens if you complete it. Can feel a little bit framey now as we're all used to our new gen racing speeds, but make no mistake, this is very much a worthy addition to your Rectrum. C and VG magazine reviewed the Specky port alongside the Amiga and ST versions and scored it higher than both, claiming it to be the best ever Spectrum arcade conversion. As for rule breaking, it's almost clear with joystick support, although spacebar is needed for your turbos. It's also very pick up and playable and also downloadable too. Nice. Best RPG tactical combat strategy type game. Now, 3 games all got pretty much the same amount of mentions, so I get to choose. Hooray! So the games that got the most votes were Nether Earth, Chaos, and a game I got confused with Chaos, so sorry about that, Lords of Chaos, which is my pick of the bunch, as it's another Julian Gollett game with Chaos in the title that I've not played, so there. After shit got real, too much power being waved around, friendly wizards started getting all tetchy with each other to find out who will reign above them all as Lords of Chaos. A bit like me and Tesco's at 3:30 on a Sunday, quite honestly. Now, I read the manual, absorbed the bonkers story, and followed the tutorial, which is all very nice. But f*** me, this is way too involved for a quick, let's look what this game can do for a video vibe I'm trying to bring to the table. So here is someone else's playthrough who seemingly knows what they're doing. I'll link it in the description. It's a turn-based game for up to 4 players where basically the aim is to survive the scenario long enough to get the hell out of town once the portal thing appears. Like other Julian Gollett games I've played or seen, it's a lovely looking game with clear, concise menu options and controls that become easier to navigate once you get the hang of everything that is going on. I'm certainly going to invest some proper sit down time into this one, and if you like these type of games too, I reckon you should as well. The best magazine score came from Your Sinclair, who gave it a mega game worthy 90%, claiming it was easy to get into but with lots of depth too, whilst being very nicely presented. As for the rules, well, as far as an RPG goes, I reckon it ticks all 3. Yes, there is a learning curve, but it's easy to pick up and play at least from a nicely laid out menu system. Joystick support, which is cool, and it's downloadable too, so happy days. Best flying game, or basically best sci-fi space type game. Okay, who didn't see this one coming? Although completely flounced the joystick only rule by using pretty much every key on the flipping keyboard. Now, I was going to dismiss it for that alone, but so many people mentioned this absolute classic, so you rule breakers win. I must admit though, it would be pretty cool to download the keyboard overlay and get it to fit on the Retrum and play this on your big telly. So, okay, I can see this might be kind of interesting. I'm sure I don't have to explain Elite to any of you because surely everyone has played this at some point, but it is an astonishing game that Firebird paid quite a hefty amount to license so they could port it to everything outside of the BBC Micro. Okay, planets might look a bit see-through, or is that space debris, and graphically it was never going to win any prizes, but holy moly, this game is still tremendous now as you choose your path to becoming elite in this ultimate space trading game ever. Sinclair User, amongst others, rated the game very highly, giving it 5 out of 5 here. At least the game is freely downloadable, which even includes versions that bypasses the annoying lens lock protection system. Other notable games you mentioned more than once that are pretty similar in the same sort of sci-fi vein are Timegate, Codename Matt, and my personal favourite from these three, Dark Star, which has an incredible sense of speed. And they're all worthy of being added to your Retrum if flying around in space is your thing. Right, two quick ones up next, because not many of you mentioned two-player games, which would suggest not many of you have got any friends, or puzzle games, which surprised me, because aren't we all getting to that age now where we all like a decent puzzle, no? Or was that just me? Anyways, the clear winner on the two-player front was actually one of my favourite Commodore 64 games that actually played just as well on the Specky, Bubble Bobble. Now I just love the almost non-violent cutesy nature of this one. I say almost as I'm not sure if trapping and then popping a nasty inner bubble is fatal or not. Don't get me wrong, this one is fun in one player, but with two you can spend some serious time just getting a decent score far into the game. I love sitting down with a mate, glass of pop, wasting a summer holiday rainy afternoon just blowing bubbles, creating water slides and eating all manner of delicious fruity snacks. Surely the same applies now with an old friend and a beer or two, no? Any of you that voted for this in the 1987 Crash Readers Award gave it an admirable second place in Best Platform Game, which was won by Auf Wiedersehen Monty Mole. Still, joysticks? Yes. Playable? Hell yes. And downloadable too. If only that jump noise wasn't so fucking annoying. Oh, I almost forgot some quick shout outs for two-player. Akari Warriors, which is tricky to download by the way. Pang. Spy vs Spy, love that. Gauntlet, which was excellent on the Specky. Oh, and Rampage, which is also tricky to get hold of, but is bloody marvellous. Onto the puzzlers, and two titles stood out from you lot with a very honourable shout out for Deflector, which is one of those laser beam and mirror type affairs that will have you puzzled for hours in a very nice way that the levels progress here. Clear winner though was Splitting Images. Hold on, did you say Spitting Image, the satirical puppet show that was massive back in the day? No, I said Splitting Images, but I can see why you got confused, as did Fluck and Law, who weren't too happy with the close naming, particularly as the game features world leaders and celebrities who appear in puppet form every week, so Domark renamed the game to Split Personalities. If you have the original named game in your collection, it's worth a lot more than the rename, that's for sure. Anyway, onto the game, which is basically one of those slide puzzle things that were popular for a while, except with the time limit and bombs, this is heaps more stressful. Not all the bits that are chucked out are useful, and some will kill you, so you've got to dispose of them in the open walls. It's all pretty tough actually, but bloody addictive too. I'm determined to get past level 1 here, and will add this to my Rectrum for sure. Your Sinclair gave it a solid 9 and remarked at the ingenious avoidance in royalties to this seemingly TV tie-in before they were forced to change the name. As for our 3 rules, a tick for all of them, so a definite addition. Might just need a cheeky poke on your Rectrum though to make it a bit easier. Now, shoot 'em ups. What a wide spectrum of gaming that, see what I did there? Of gaming that covers. So hundreds, alright, not hundreds, I'm not freaking Mr. Beast. Lots of games were mentioned, but not many more than a few times, so I'm not shouting them all out. But R-Type gets a mention because quite frankly, it still blows my tiny mind what they did with the Spectrum port, even though it's fiendishly hard. Just mind-boggling. Still, it's not downloadable from the user sites, and apparently early versions of the game could not be completed, as level 8 didn't exist with level 7 put on the tape twice. Oops. So no R-Type, but in its place I think we have a worthy replacement. Faster Than Light's 1986 shmup Light Force. Now, before I witter on about this game, just take a moment to lap up those graphics for a 1986 release. I mean, just look at it. Now there's definitely some clever stuff going on under the hood here to avoid those colour clash issues we're also akin to on the Spectrum, but it's almost non-existent here. I mean look, the game's not perfect, the sound is lacking, and I wish it auto-fired, especially on keyboard. It doesn't have any super duper blow up all the shit style pickups either, but what you do get is fast, playable and blimmin' beautiful to look at when playing on your big telly. So this has to be the pick. It got a crash smash with most of the team dribbling in all of the graphics, and also hits all 3 of our rules too. So get this one downloaded. Well, butter my baps and call me Shirley. You lot like a platformer almost as much as you like a shoot 'em up, with tons of games mentioned. Sorry I can't name them all, but ones with more than one suggestion were Fantasy World Dizzy, Wanted Monty Mole, Dynamite Dan, and Roller Coaster, which I'd never played before and is utterly bonkers. Jet Set Willy, classic, did a video all about it, up here and down there. And Jumping Jack, legendary. But the one we're going to look at, which is a bit of a rule breaker, which got mentioned 3 times more than any others, was A&F's 1983 charmer, Chucky Egg. Written by a 16-year-old Nigel Alderton, who got the job as a T-boy at A&F, he presented his unfinished game and was hired to finish his code. Seemingly, it was released on the Spectrum, BBC Micro and Dragon 32's versions in quick succession, and Chucky Egg oozes nostalgia for me and is one of my favourite Spectrum games full stop. With a simple premise of collecting all the eggs, Henhouse Henry has to be quick to outsmart the evil birds. I say evil, but possibly justified if Henry is merely stomping on their babies. It's got some tricky platforms across increasingly harder levels, and some of the egg positionings make for some interesting jumps. But the mechanic in this, where you can get up ladders by jumping at them or pressing up in preparation, makes this easier than such games like Burger Time that required pinpoint precision at times. Crash Magazine gave it 80%, suggesting it was nothing new, but cracking fun nonetheless. See what they did there? Which is a fair assessment at the time. It's just one of those so goddamn playable games that makes it still fantastic today. So why wasn't it on my list, you may ask? Well, there is only joystick support, sort of, through cursor support, I think. And although yes, it's very pick up and playable, it's not available to easily download, which is a big shame. And lastly, for the old cover tape, and before we get to our special mention, I should have known what you lot would pick for a cover tape game. Even though it wasn't exclusively a cover tape game, it's the one everyone remembers just being a cover tape game. And that is, of course, the better than Arkanoid clone, Batty. Originally released on Hit Pack 6 Volume 2 and being favourably reviewed by Crash Magazine, it grew more notoriety when given away free on the cover of issue 22 of Your Sinclair. What makes this special is that at the time in 1987, cover tapes were quite demo driven with the odd full game thrown in which wasn't up to much. Batty came full in and blew other games in the same genre clean out the water, and it was on a cover tape. It was one of those everyone remembers. What's bonkers though is that pretty much at the same time the Hit Pack Volume 2 was out and was even advertised in the same issue that the game was released as a free cassette. So I wonder what the deal with Elite was here. Even some 2 years later, the game was given an encore budget release. So who the hell knows? What I do know though is this is a cracking bat and ball game that had everything you wanted from one. I mean, it does come with some issues. There are noticeable slowdowns when shit goes crazy. And the aliens that shoot at you can be really unforgiving, as you have to go for that ball exactly where a missile is. The ball can be hard to see at times, but these are all honestly minor gripes to what is essentially a game that you would be happy paying good money for. Now, even though the Elite back catalogue is generally not available to download, this one is. There's joystick support too, and it's pretty much pick up and playable, so happy days all round. Another title that is worth a mention that is well known as a cover tape but did have small commercial release is Dynamic's Spanish release Dustin, which found its way onto the front cover of issue 34 of Your Sinclair. Now that's a front cover, and still remains a firm prison escape favourite of mine. So finally, I had one viewer give me their bunch of games which were all frankly newer homebrew stuff that I haven't covered. So I'll be playing you out with Jason Roughton's 2011 release Buzzsaw Plus, the Foxton Locks remix, which is a Tetris columns variation with buzzsaws. Now I'll be honest, I started playing this to get enough gameplay footage for the end of this video, and then I ended up being late for my dinner as I tried to line up enough blimmin' boxes and buzzsaw the hell out of all those little green guys. It's really good and scored a respectable 88% in the Crash Special Edition 2018, where Chris Wilkins informs us that the game has more to it than meets the eye, although it's lacking a little in in-game music. It ticks all our boxes too, which is very welcome, so happy days all round. I'll also put his homebrew suggestions in the description below if you want to check out those too, although I don't know the availability of any of those and whether you have to pay for them or not. Right, I'm not going to ask you for your thoughts on the games chosen in the comments, as you bloody chose them, but it will still be nice to hear from you all about your thoughts on these games, good or bad. So till next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one. Bye for now.